Night in Magic begins by showing a young man named Tsubasa Kurata, who is busy doing his job as a programmer in a company. Kurata is a very talented young man in the field of programming. Apart from having a passion for computers, he has a hobby of collecting combat robot toys from various editions. Kurata often stopped by a toy store to buy the latest combat robot toys. But that night, without him knowing, his life completely changed. While Kurata was crossing the road, a car suddenly went full speed and struck him. As a result, he died. The scene changes to the moment where a family consisting of a grandfather, mother, and son is boarding a train to return to their home. However, in the middle of the journey, the train was blocked by a robot monster. The grandfather tried to fight the robot with his sword, but a more enormous robot monster suddenly appeared and destroyed the train. Even the boy was almost killed by the robot monster. Fortunately, a large warrior robot appeared and immediately beat the monster. The boy looks amazed to see the heroic action of the robot warrior and intends to become an operator of the robot soldier when he grows up. It turns out that the boy is the reincarnation of Kurata, who has now been reborn as a child named Ernesti Echevarria. Ernesti was born in an era where every kingdom experienced very rapid development in the field of battle. One form of development that is very real is the existence of a combat robot called Silhouette Knight, which is a combination of the use of robot technology and magic power. Each Silhouette Knight is controlled by an operator known as a Knight Runner. Ernesti, as a member of a noble family, has the opportunity to learn a lot about the knowledge of combat robots from the royal professor. He also has a commander who becomes his personal trainer to achieve his dream of becoming a Knight Runner. One morning, a boy and a girl were climbing the roof of a house named Archid Olter, alias Kid, and Adeltrud Olter, alias Adi. When Adi slipped from the roof, Ernesti, who happened to be training in the vicinity, immediately caught her and saved her. Since that meeting, Ernesti began to make friends with Kid and Adi. Unexpectedly, Ernesti also entered the same academy as them. While at the academy, Ernesti sees a dwarf named Botson Termonen, who is in trouble because he is being bullied by the other kids. Ernesti, Kid, and Adi try to help him and cheer him up. While at Botson's shop, Ernesti complained that the wand provided by their academy was still less efficient and less than optimal. Then, Ernesti drew a new and more powerful wand design. Botson, who is a weapon assembler, looks impressed by Ernesti's design and intends to make the series of weapons as a thank you to him. A few days later, Ernesti and the students of the first grade academy took the magic energy measurement test, commonly known as mana. In the exam, Ernesti requested his teacher to transfer him to a higher class if he could pass the exam with perfect scores. The teacher agreed to Ernesti's request because he thought Ernesti was just bragging. Ernesti then took out the previously modified magic weapon and fired straight at the target. The immense power that the weapon possessed took the teachers and other academy students by surprise. And according to the previous agreement, the academy transferred him to a higher class. The scene changes to the moment 3 years later. Ernesti, Adi, and Kid have grown into teenagers and entered the high school academy. In that season, they will undergo training to fight on the battlefield. After arriving at the training area, all the academy students would camp out for a few nights in the wilderness to watch the Knight Runner battle against its enemy. A student leader named Stefania Sarati approached Ernesti's tent and the others to chat for a while. From their conversation, it is known that Stefania is the half-sister of Adi and Kid. That night, a swarm of monsters suddenly attacked the training area. All the students ran to evacuate to a safer place while the senior students tried to block the monsters' attack using the Silhouette Knight. Ernesti and Adi, who have magical abilities, decide to help the senior students to defeat the group of monsters. Fortunately, the group of monsters was easily defeated, and the situation in the camp area was safe again. Ernesti felt strange and suspicious of the presence of monsters that could enter their camp area, considering that the area had previously been confirmed to be safe. Shortly after, a giant monster named Behemoth appeared and approached the encampment area. It turned out that Behemoth was the one who had made the forest monsters that had previously run over to the campsite. On the other hand, the royal combat troops who heard the Behemoth monster's attack had prepared and immediately headed for the location to defeat him. While waiting for the royal combat troops to arrive, the senior students named Edgar Blanche, Helvi Aubry, and Dietrich Nitz used their Silhouette Knights to block the Behemoth's attack while the rest of the students evacuated again. However, Dietrich, who saw his comrades dead, began to get scared and decided to run away. Ernesti, who saw that, quickly took over the Silhouette Knight. Ernesti had difficulty controlling the Silhouette Knight because his legs and arms were still too short. To solve the problem, he used his magical abilities and knowledge of technology to modify the Silhouette Knight system. After successfully controlling the Silhouette Knight, Ernesti immediately ran to the battlefield to fight the Behemoth monster. He seemed excited to be able to use the Silhouette Knight to defeat the behemoth. Not long after, the Silhouette Knights from the Royal Combat troops arrived and immediately helped Ernesti fight against the behemoth. As a result of the intense battle, the Silhouette Knight used by Ernesti began to suffer damage. Ernesti exited the Silhouette Knight and began using his magic power to defeat the monster. Unexpectedly, the attack from his magic power managed to kill the behemoth. News of Ernesti defeating the behemoth had reached the kingdom, and the king decided to give him a gift as a reward. Ernesti then said he wanted to gain knowledge of the Silhouette Knight core creation method, called the Ether Reactor. Hearing the request, the king was willing to provide the information, on the condition that Ernesti should be able to design a new Silhouette Knight body. The next morning, Ernesti began to put forward his ideas regarding the Silhouette Knight's stronger frame and modifications to the Silhouette Knight's more effective magic and sword abilities. In addition, Ernesti also created an armor called Silhouette Gear that can lift very heavy objects. And it has been proven from the test results that the Silhouette Knight Ernesti has modified is far superior to the ordinary Silhouette Knight. However, Ernesti's Silhouette Knight is still not optimal because it drains a lot of mana or magic energy. In the evening, Ernesti and his friends have a party to celebrate the success of their Silhouette Knight trial that they did that day. In the middle of the party, one of the men suddenly stepped out of the crowd and secretly went to meet a mysterious group of people. The next day, the royal commander and several of his soldiers picked up Ernesti to bring the modified Silhouette Knight design to the kingdom. On the way, the troops were attacked by a monster. Luckily, they could easily kill the monster using the new Silhouette Knight. A week later, Ernesti met with his professor, Nut Dixgard, to explain the development of his Silhouette Knight abilities. In his latest design, Ernesti has managed to overcome some of the shortcomings of the previous Silhouette Knight and intends to improve the Silhouette Knight over time. Shortly after, several monsters infiltrated and attacked the village where Professor Dixgard lived. The Royal Combat troops were then deployed to defeat the monsters. However, just as the Royal Combat troops were about to return to the kingdom, a group of criminals suddenly attacked one of its Silhouette Knights and took control of it. They then used it to infiltrate the royal palace and carry out attacks. Fortunately, the troops guarding the royal castle managed to withstand the attack even though the criminals had stolen two of the kingdom's Silhouette Knight units. While the criminals were away from the kingdom, they coincidentally met Edgar, Dietrich, Kid and Addy, who were carrying a new Silhouette Knight unit. The thugs immediately launched attacks on Edgar and the others, so a fight ensued. Dietrich managed to defeat the men of the criminals, but Edgar, who used the old Silhouette Knight unit, was defeated by the villain's leader. After the incident, the king summoned Ernesti and his friends to the kingdom. The king appointed Ernesti to be the commander of a troop unit called the Silver Fennec Knights, who will be tasked with creating a new Silhouette Knight. The next day, the royal commander sent several types of royal Silhouette Knight units to Ernesti's workshop so that they could be modified and developed. The commander also said that in 10 months from now, the kingdom would conduct a match between the Silhouette Knight unit that Ernesti had made and the Silhouette Knight designed by the Royal Laboratory. Hearing the news, all the workshop members were excited to develop their Silhouette Knights. In his latest design, Ernesti will create a Silhouette Knight that can be ridden by 2 operators and uses 2 ether reactor cores. Thus, the Silhouette Knight will become more formidable and powerful. Time passed, and the day of the Silhouette Knight sparring had arrived. The Knight Silhouette designed by the Royal Laboratory will be operated by the best Knight Runner, while Ernesti's Silhouette Knight will be operated by Ernesti and his friends. When the Silhouette Knight designed by Ernesti appeared in the arena, the king and all the royal officials looked amazed because the Silhouette Knight could accommodate several other Silhouette Knights in it. Shortly after, the match began. Kid and Addy will go on the offensive first against the kingdom's 3 Silhouette Knights. After that, Ernesti used his Silhouette Knight that could fly and directly hit several of the kingdom's Silhouette Knights. The entire audience looked dumbfounded because it was the first time they had seen a Silhouette Knight that could fly. Then, Edgar and Dietrich caught up with a combo attack. Ernesti's team seemed superior to the royal team in terms of Knight silhouettes. Still, the royal team was superior in terms of operators because their Knight runners were much more experienced. After the match was over, the king looked satisfied and praised the greatness of the 2 teams. The scene changes when the king passes his throne 2 months later to his son, while Ernesti and his friends graduate from the Knight Runner Academy. Now, the Silver Phoenix Knights have moved to a new base. Sometime later, a group of monsters named Shellcase stormed into the center of the Ether Reactor, which is the core of Silhouette Knight. Ernesti, his troops, and the Royal Prince Amries are mobilized to help defeat the monster. The Silver Phoenix Squad will defeat the Shellcase Monster Squad, while Ernesti with Addy and Kid will go into the forest to find the Queen of the Monster. After finding the Monster Queen, they tried to find the monster's weak points to defeat it faster. Fortunately, after a fairly intense fight, they defeated the monster. The next day, the former king who had promised Ernesti about the information on the maker of the ether reactor would finally keep his promise. Ernesti was met with a royal advisor named Olver Blondal. Olver then explains that the ether reactor can only be created by descendants of a race called the Alv race. The Alv race has a special magic that can create clay which will later become the heart of the ether reactor. Despite knowing he would never be able to create the reactor directly, Ernesti was still eager to learn the science. He learned about all the methods of making the ether reactor from start to finish. 3 months later, Ernesti returns to the Silver Phoenix Army base to create Silhouette Knights using the fall of the Behemoth monster. After a long process, Ernesti finally managed to build his dream Silhouette Knight, named Ikaruga. On the other hand, a kingdom declared war against another kingdom, named Kushapurka. The empire fought using Ernesti's previously stolen Razor Knight. As a result, the kingdom of Kushapurka was conquered, and the princess of the kingdom of Kushapurka, named Aliner, was forced to marry a prince from an enemy kingdom. Ernesti had obtained information regarding the invasion and decided to come to the Kushapurka kingdom. Ernesti and his friends will attack the enemy to save Kushapurka's work and save Princess Aliner. In the evening, Ernesti and the others infiltrate the kingdom of Kushapurka using the Silhouette Gear to release Princess Aliner and the rest of the kingdom who have been held hostage. The following day, the enemy kingdom tracked Ernesti and his friends using a fighter plane. The fighter plane was created by an engineer named Oratio Agaujas. Fortunately, Ernesti managed to repulse the enemy troops by using Ikaruga's long-range laser fire. The following night, the enemy royal troops returned to Ernesti's hideout with more troops. Fortunately, Ernesti had anticipated this and had prepared missile launcher robots at various points. The entire fleet of planes from the enemy empire was destroyed and fell one by one. The army of soldiers from the enemy kingdom had also been intercepted by Edgar, Helvi and the Silhouette Knights. Meanwhile, Ernesti flew using Ikaruga and directly attacked the Silhouette Knight of the enemy kingdom's prince. Ikaruga proved far superior, so Ernesti managed to defeat the prince of the kingdom's enemies. After the battle was won, most of the territory of the kingdom of Kushapurka was reclaimed, and Princess Aliner was finally made queen of their kingdom. After that, Ernesti and the others devised a plan to capture the royal capital of Kushapurka with an army led by Queen Aliner. The battle between the Kushapurka royal troops and the enemy royal troops was fierce at night. Unexpectedly, Ernesti managed to design a fighter plane to be able to defeat the enemy royal troops. Using oil missiles launched from the fighter plane, he managed to burn the enemy fighter planes. Ernesti then uses his Ikaruga to penetrate the enemy's defenses and directly attack the enemy's main plane. After a fairly fierce battle, he could finally destroy the fighter plane belonging to the enemy kingdom. The series concludes with a scene where Ernesti and his friends have returned to their kingdom and live their lives as usual. The moral that can be learned from this anime is, teaches us to be more enthusiastic in increasing knowledge and keep practicing hard in everything we love, because hard work will one day pay off.